you. Good morning, everyone. We will call the October 11th Crow Wing County Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Please join us for the pledge in a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is open forum. If there's anyone here to speak towards something not on today's agenda, please come forward, state your name and address.
My name is Rick Feld, 17605 Woodrow Road, Brainerd, Minnesota. But before I start, I have a point of order. The last time I testified here, I was stopped or interrupted 3 separate times, twice by the county administrator, Mr. Hool, and then once by Paul Coring. It is not my intent to threaten anybody, and I personally shook Paul Coring's hand after that, and I wanted the board to know that. And also, it says on item number 6 on our thing that the county commissioners are not to address the people. So I want to make it clear, and I want to be on the same page as everybody, because I know Mr. Barrows is extremely particular about the rule of order, and it's already given him a reason for voting against our group. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page, that we don't interrupt the person when they're speaking. And if you want to correct me after I'm done, I'll stay afterwards, and I'm more than willing to admit if I made a mistake. 2 Timothy 3:17 says, all scripture is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness. And I follow that.
Okay.
All right. I just want to thank Commissioner Brecken and Commissioner Barrows for showing their lack of disrespect to the U.S. Constitution. Whether you realize it or not, you owe a debt of gratitude to Commissioner Rosemary Franson. If she hadn't have struck out that one bottom line that she was opposed to, I would have brought a lawsuit and sued this county board for that, because it went against 2 different articles in the First Amendment. And I chided you guys before that you were constitutionally illiterate, and I meant it. And I salute you as an Army patriot, Rosemary Franson, for sticking up for the Constitution, and I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
That is what we want. We want commissioners with a spine. That is what we're asking for. And along those lines, when Sheriff Goddard testified down at the county forum, and he said that there's no place in the Constitution for the sheriff's office. That shows absolutely our concept. We just pledged allegiance to the republic. The republic was formed from the ground up. It made the county the #1 strength, with the sheriff being the ultimate authority in that county, and that is granted to us by the Constitution. It even protects us from the FBI and an unconstitutional governor putting dictates on us. That's what our founding fathers wanted, And then he also said that our crime rate is about the same. That is an absolute lie. We are in the bottom 96% in cities in Minnesota right now because of our crime rate. We had 70 violent crimes in 2021. We had 16 rapes, 3 armed robbery, 51 assaults, 491 personal property crimes. We had 87 burglary, 360 theft, 44 motor vehicle theft. In Brainerd, Minnesota, I am 1 in 29 to have a chance of property crime. I only lived here 3 years and I was already burglarized. So I am already a statistic on that roll. We have a 34.11 chance in 1,000 residents. 2107 is the Minnesota average. And 19.0 is the national median average for personal property crime. If we are ranked in the bottom 96% in Minnesota, only 3% of other cities are more violent than us. I find that hard to believe. Brainerd is a very wealthy area. I could understand if we were dirt poor. And there is nothing that you are requiring of the sheriff for any kind of statistical data or anything publicly to show anywhere for accountability. I find that appalling. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we will move on to the review and approval of the September 27th board meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Franzine. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Review and approve today's agenda.
Mr. Chair, if I might, I would like to add, after our consent agenda approval, an item for the Brainerd American Legion to their applying for a permit to have pull tabs up at Dunmire's on North Long Lake. So I'd like to add that as an action item.
Okay.
Motion to approve with additions.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Franzine, second by Commissioner Coring. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Consent agenda.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Coring. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. That brings us to, Debbie, are you?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Yes, we did receive an application for a premise permit, which is pull tabs at the Dunmire's on the Lake location for the Brainerd American Legion Post 255. Typically, this would have been on your consent agenda. Unfortunately, we just received the application yesterday, but in the interest of being as timely as possible to allow them to start selling as soon as they can, I appreciate your consideration of this today.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Franzine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Deb. Item 6 is public hearing, short-term rentals.
Mr. Chair, I would move to open the public hearing to consider revisions to the Crow Wing County short-term rental licensing ordinance.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Franzine to open the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. At this time, if you'd step forward to the mic, your name and address for the record. And Bill, you can start her off.
Excuse me. I'm Bill Bedard at 22270 Powder House Road, Deerwood, Minnesota, but in the municipality of Cuyuna. Mayor Bricks asked that if I could come here. Originally, Mayor Bricks was going to be here and council members, but he's at a medical appointment. Nurse is pulling an extra shift this morning. We have a council member traveling, and the other one's in the middle of Oktoberfest preparation at Rutgers. Hence, you have me. City of Cuyuna, on the changes to the revision, does not support it as it stands. In particular, the sentence that says the entirety of the jurisdiction. And if I could just take less than 2 minutes, about 2 minutes, explain the rationale behind that. Back in June of 2021, the city got notified of the short-term rental ordinance that was passed, I think it was the previous December, effective January 2021, using the public health ordinance. We were not included in any of those discussions. It was just an oversight. But in notifying the county that there were 2 places in the city of Cuyuna that we found out from investigation had been issued licenses, notified the county in June of 2021 that our short-term rental are not allowed in single-family residentials, which is exclusively for one-family occupancy. At that time, we were told the licenses, if we move forward to enforce it, sent letters as such, copied the county, those would be revoked. September 2021, we met the mayor, myself, a land director, our commissioner district, and also with Tom, our attorney. We sent letters out in October 2021 of enforcement, copied the county saying that those property owners that are in single-family residential, 100% occupancy, cannot operate a short-term rental, and asked them to cease operations. Sometime after that, in preparation for our second letter to send out, we contacted the county and were told at that time that the county had changed its position and that it would not rescind or revoke. We continued our discussions with the county in January with the land director and also our commissioner. And then we sent, because we're proactive, and it's not the council itself, but the people it represents, a survey out in March of 2022 to the property owners within this district. 75%, and it was about 90% return of the surveys, so it was a good return response. 75% overall, which included recent purchases of lots and homes by investors in this single-family residential district. 75% said they would not want short-term rentals. If you removed those recent investments in the property for potential short-term rentals, because some of those people were advised by realtors, or maybe they had contacted with the county, said that the license could be issued and they could have their short-term rental. And people were confused because they thought the county's a higher authority. If you remove those lots that were by investors looking at short-term rentals, it was 85% of the residents of those lots owners said no, they did not want short-term rental. In May of 2022, we sent the second letter of enforcement to the property owners that were not adhering to the city's ordinance, and we also copied the land department. Overall, the city has had 3 public hearings and unanimously moved to enforce the city ordinance, where short-term rentals are not allowed in single-family residential districts. Additionally, we sent a resolution as requested in September 2022 to Crow Wing County stating our opposition and our rationale for not allowing short-term rentals in the district of the residential single-family. At that time, it was conveyed that there would be no renewals or new issues, short-term rental license issued by the county. The city can consider short-term rentals in what's called in multiple family districts. It's business, it's commercial, it's open districts. But the short-term rentals in a plat or individual properties that are for single-family occupancy, which has long been consistent with the city's growth plans for those areas, was not part of that, consideration. I think the county public ordinance and the city's zoning ordinance can be inclusive and it can complement each other. The city and the county can be partners in this resolution. There have been some concerns that there might be an increased workload if you were to consider, when it is allowed by the public state statute for public health, that you could issue licenses for those areas where a short-term rental is permitted. However, it's unfair to the applicant, the city, the county, adds confusion to issue a short-term rental for an area that city ordinance doesn't. There really isn't a public health issue if the short-term rental is not allowed. So it's a bit premature to issue a license for an application that the applicant will find he can't use. The city of Kaino would be willing to help if there's a concern with that workload. I know the city could, every day, if there's an applicant for short-term rental, quickly turn around, or through its zoning administrator, myself, could turn around saying, yes, that falls in a district that you could or could not. The city would like to consider itself a partner in the growth of the Cana area economically, but also for the fact there is a housing need. So I guess in summary, the city could not support the way the revision short-term rental ordinance Crow Wing County has on its agenda today, because would allow no licenses to be issued, or license to be issued in all the districts. The city would like to see that change so that it could allow short-term rental license and take at least consideration to allow in the business, multiple residential, commercial, and open areas. The single-family residential district is really a contract between that person who bought the home to live in and the city. And in there, it does not allow for short-term rentals or commercial activities. Thank you for your time.
Can I just ask a quick question? Does Cuyuna, if people want to rent if they buy a house and they want to rent it by the month, they're allowed to do that? Because that's not considered a short-term rental, right?
I believe the short-term rental is 30 days or less, is from state statutes that we've read. So if it was somebody that is providing housing for people, I believe that could be provided. The city is open for that discussion larger. And short-term rentals, we are not saying they can't be in Cuyuna, but we're saying that in our single-family residential district, it's very clear, and it's included on the transactions that are recorded at the county, that this is for a single-family, 100% occupancy, and no commercial activities. We owe it to them to protect that interest.
So if an investor wants to, Mr. Chair, so if an investor wants to come to Cuyuna and buy 3 lots and build 3 houses and rent them out month to month, you guys are okay with that?
That would be short-term if it's 30 days. If
Well, I
they're
mean,
doing-
it's
You're talking about like an investor trying to help solve the housing issues that we
Correct.
have in Crow Wing County.
Correct.
Yeah, that is something that, I can't speak for the city council,
Okay.
but they certainly would look if that's in a residential district, is the intent, and if you look at our ordinance, similar to many ordinances, it says what the intent is up front of your ordinance. In our case, in that district, it's promoting housing and, long-term housing. So could it be considered that? Yes, but I can't make that decision
Okay.
for the council.
Okay,
at each-
I just was curious.
All right.
Any other questions? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak on this issue today. My name is David Chansky. I'm the City Administrator for the City of Breezy Point, and I'm here at the direction of the City Council. The City of Breezy Point strongly objects to the current county short-term rental licensing ordinance and any amendment that does not directly acknowledge, respect, and deem supreme any regulations and licensing procedures adopted by a local unit of government over short-term rentals. The City of Breezy Point has regulated and restricted the operation of short-term rentals since 2013 in a manner deemed sufficient by the Breezy Point City Council. However, since the institution of this ordinance, the city and many other local units of government like her have been put in the position of either abandoning our own short-term rental regulations and adopting the county's licensing ordinance, excluding the operation of short-term rentals entirely within our own jurisdiction, or maintaining our own local control at the cost of conducting time-consuming and potentially costly enforcement against properties that are licensed by the county but do not meet local standards. Unfortunately, the City Council will not adopt this ordinance, as the enforcement of it does not meet their standards for maintaining compliance, as well as other various standards. And the council does not desire to exclude short-term rentals entirely, but to effectively manage how they operate and where they operate. This puts the city in a position of being in constant conflict with Crow Wing County, a position for which the county is solely responsible. Since this ordinance went into effect, Crow Wing County has disregarded the city's local control and issued over 35 short-term rental licenses to properties in areas excluded by the Breezy Point Code of Ordinances. And at no time has Crow Wing County staff informed the city of Breezy Point that a short-term rental license has been issued, nor inquired with the city to ensure that a prospective property met local regulations prior to issuing the license. Not even the state of Minnesota is so disrespectful of local control, as the state will inquire with a local unit of government prior to issuing a commercial daycare license or increasing the occupancy thereof to ensure it meets all local regulations, and will not issue a secondhand auto dealer's license without seeking the authorization of the local unit of government. These are just two examples where the state of Minnesota seeks to respect local control even when it is not required to. Therefore, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, the City of Breezy Point requests that you amend this ordinance to directly acknowledge, respect, and deem supreme any regulations and licensing procedures adopted by local units of government over short-term rentals, and direct your staff to issue no further short-term rental licenses without the expressed consent of the local unit of government within which a prospective short-term rental property is located. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Sure.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Larry Peterson. I live at 15584 Welton Road, Brainerd, Minnesota. We bought that property, it's about 13 acres of land with 300 feet on the Red Sand Lake, and we're right next door to a short-term rental property. And we've had problems. We've been there for 11 years. We've had problems off and on with noise and carrying on through the hours of the night. And the property owners of that short-term rental are very hospitable, and they say, just don't call the sheriff or anybody, just call me and we'll quiet things down. So we've done that over the past years and tried to be good neighbors to them. But lately, it's gotten to where the noise has been more, and I had to call the sheriff a couple weeks ago, and the sheriff came out at 11:15 on a Tuesday night or Wednesday night, one or the other, to quiet this party down over at this short-term rental house. And I didn't realize, and I saw in the paper, I didn't realize that the operating hours for quiet time is 10 to 7 for 5 days, but from 12 to 7 on Friday and Saturday nights. And that's totally out of line to have quiet time from 12 to 7 on Friday and Saturdays. Most campgrounds or any place you go, there's a quiet time starting at 10 o'clock at night usually. So I don't know why we had set up a 10 o'clock or a 12 o'clock quiet time on those 2 nights. And in the summer, when you like to have your windows open and have the air coming off the lake instead of your air conditioner running, it's kind of disturbing. And on that property, I have a 150-foot lot between my house and the short-term rental, and we wanted to build a retirement home on that property. But we can't build it, even though it's our property and our ownership. We can't build another home there because we'd be 150 feet closer to this short-term rental, which just makes it difficult for us. And it's not right as property owners that we should have a short-term rental in a residential area like that. A single-family home, short-term rentals, and they can rent out to 12 or 14 people, and they rent many times. There's probably that many there most of the time. So my complaint is first of all, the short-term rental on a single-family home is like we've already heard. And the second is that the hours that they have a quiet time is set from 12 to 7 on Friday and Saturday nights is totally out of line also with camping requirements or any other requirements. But I can appreciate these people that are coming up and paying $5,000 a week to rent a short-term rental and spend $5,000. They want to come up and party. But it's at our residential expense that they're doing this. And it just doesn't seem fair when we're paying our property taxes and doing what we should be doing, keeping a place up, that you've got people that come up out of the cities and spend that kind of money and just want to party. And you have other neighbors all around you, you don't hear any noise from them at all. You know, people that live in this area don't party like that. So that, my concern is first of all, short-term rental. Second is the hours on Friday and Saturday from 12 o'clock is too late to be able to make noise. Anyway, thank you very much for my time.
Thank you. Next.
Hello. My name is Mike Asplin, 19215 Lakewood Drive in Deerwood. Live in an area that is predominantly single family again. I guess within the last 3 to 5 years, I suspect, that's gone to about 10%. The 20 families, I'd have to say, yeah, there's 2. So we got about 10% short-term rentals there. We personally live on a lake that is 35 acres, I suppose. For the last 10 years, been trying to manage this for fishing and having fun and whatnot. It's so small you can't even have really a motor on the lake because you'd always be within 100 yards of shore, so there's no wake. You'd pretty much be, against any lake regulations. It's so tiny. But 10 years ago, we started stocking it with walleyes, just to have something fun for the neighbors. There's only 5. I think there's 5 neighbors on the lake. 1 short-term rental on the lake now. And in the last 10 years, we spent about $8,000 with 10,000 Lakes Aquatics to come out, state-issued permit, put the fish in and whatnot. The last time we did that was in the fall of last year. They came out and put 800 fingerlings in the lake. Talking to the neighbors recently, nobody's caught one. We've had groups that came up from the short-term rental, and this is just an example of unintended consequences, is what I call it. We had a group of people come up, starting in 2018. And they came up in September, and this little lake can really be fantastic. Really a lot of fun to fish, right? I'm a big-time bass fisherman, and in the last 10 years, I'd have to say I caught 40 bass or more in there, over 7 pounds. That's phenomenal for the state. Have no problem sharing this resource. It's beautiful. It's so much fun. In 2018, that was rented to 4 guys. They came up with fishing kayaks with 6 rods in the back sticking out, and they pounded this lake for 12 hours a day, and they kept every big fish they caught. You cannot catch a 3-pound bass in there, and nobody's caught a walleye this year. Now, that doesn't really seem right when we have a cooperative of neighbors that are spending money, number one, but also are trying their best to keep the lake in a tip-top shape, And then we get people come up from Illinois or something to spend 3 days and just pound this lake and bring home their limit of fish. The 4 guys are putting 24 bass in their bag for 2 to 3 days. They're taking 70 fish twice a year out of this little lake, and they've decimated it. So, we've got together with the landowner. We put up some signs inside saying that our local association would ask that you throw back this size fish and this and this and this. And we put a few stipulations on there. We're hoping that helps. But just wanted to know if anybody had heard of any of this kind of consequences like this, where it really is decimating the wildlife. Thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Next.
Larry Crane, 11969 Northgate Lane in 50 Lakes. A strong short-term rental ordinance will not affect responsible rental operators, but a strong ordinance will make poorly operated properties better. I've reviewed the Crow Wing County short-term residence, or ordinance rather, and looked to other Minnesota counties for their short-term ordinance. The Douglas County short-term ordinance is very comprehensive as compared to the Crow Wing County ordinance. Both Douglas and Crow Wing have similar lake chain attraction and tourism. Crow Wing has the Whitefish chain, and Douglas has the Alexandria Lakes chain of water. I'll highlight a few of the Douglas rules that are not contained in the Crow Wing ordinance. First being the quiet hours are established by Minnesota State Rule 7030, which state quiet hours begin at 10 p.m. and go through 7 a.m., 7 days a week. Adequate parking, but limited to 1 car per bedroom and no on-street parking. It addresses saturation and the number of properties allowed in the area. It establishes performance standards for health and safety and controls controls nuisance issues that can be enforced through the county. Performance standards for owners and management of the properties. It'll hold the rental property owners and managers responsible for guest conduct and clearly defined enforcement measures. There is not more than 1 rental unit per parcel. There are many, many more provisions in this ordinance that should be reviewed, and I invite you to look at the Douglas County short-term ordinance, which was adopted over 4 years ago with unanimous consent by its commissioners. A couple of comments regarding noise, going back to Mr. Peterson's comments. State and federal parks and private and corporate campgrounds, hotels, motels all have 10 o'clock hours. Yet Crow Wing County allows it to go till midnight on Friday and Saturday. I think that needs to be changed. With regard to saturation, we have 3 rental properties within 600 feet of each other. 2 of them are next door. They neighbor a common border. There have been times when both of those houses have been rented to a common group and filled to occupant capacity according to the current ordinance. Effectively, it turned my neighborhood into a party zone, and I think there needs to be some kind of provision in this ordinance that would prevent such saturation. We look to you as commissioners to provide leadership by creating a policy to protect the ownership rights of its residents. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next. Is there anyone else? Seeing none, Gary or Jake, do you want to come and give us a little, maybe history of violations and whatnot?
Mr. Chair, just a question. Would it, being that there's no more comment, would it be appropriate to close the public hearing and then, and then I would assume that Gary would talk about the resolution, and so maybe
one last time, if there's anybody here for public comment, we're gonna be closing that, so. Okay, seeing none?
Motion to close the public hearing on the revisions to the Crow Wing County short-term rental licensing ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Brecken. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right.
Good morning, Commissioners. We thought we'd start with, just a little bit of history. Again, this ordinance was passed and enacted in January 2021. Not only from the customers or your constituents out there, but I bet almost maybe 40% of the cities in this county requested that we have an ordinance. They wanted us to step up and help with this growing issue that they were having. So it was at the request of a lot of cities that I know a few of you attended with myself. With the statistics, just thought I would tell you what we have in the county. It would be packet number 104, if you wanted to get it up there, Trees. This year we had 475 active licenses. Last year we had 362. We had 39 of those, 39 additional ones that require no license. They're inside of a resort or area that's already appropriate. And we still have a few out there for enforcement. But we had a pretty good size uptick in the number of licenses that we issued this year. We do break it down by district, with District 2 having the bulk of those at 230 of those 475, and District 5 having 128. And, well, you don't see it, Trees.
I don't have a page 104, so that's, I don't know.
Oh, it says packet page 104. I don't know how you maybe put it in there. It would have been right after the comments, I believe. There you go. And you can see there by district, with District 3 having a huge chunk of them with 3. You'll also see we continue to we have some that are still not licensed, and you can see by district where those are at. Again, District 2 having the bulk of the ones we are working with, you could say, that need to fall into compliance with this ordinance. One of the big concerns and the main reason why this ordinance was enacted in the first place was complaints. So you can see up there on the thing, the number of total complaints we had this year was 55. Oh, and that one's different. There should be a second one. Unfortunately, there was an original. We had some changes, and there should be a second one of those that we had to make an up, and then they didn't get tore out or pulled out of the thing before you published. That's our bad.
Do I have a copy of it?
It should be in there. There should be 2 of these pages.
Right behind that one. The second page. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think 104.
I don't know which one of these?
Yeah, page 104. That'll be the right one. Yeah, that's the right one. Yep.
Okay, all good.
Awesome. Yeah, so 55 complaints. 12 of those are complaints that we don't regulate, things like dogs not on a leash. It would be one good example. 43 of them we followed up with. These are over 19 properties, so 55 complaints, but only 19 individual properties. And we still have 2 complaints that are open that are unresolved. Some of the highlights of this ordinance, when we looked, and we did look at Douglas, if the folks on that committee that wrote this ordinance, we looked at Stearns, we looked at Aiken. I mean, we looked all over the state. We went all the way to Aspen, Florida, Arizona, looked at what could be some best practices. And my understanding is it's still the board's wishes that we have an ordinance that we can actually implement, not put on a shelf and have a feel-good, and that we have a 24/7 hotline, so when the party's going on at 2 in the morning, we're all sleeping, other than the sheriff. But there's a hotline they can call that we can get a hold of the owner. So the owner is the first person we try to get a hold of to have those loud parties contained, or whatever the issue is. We go there first. The second option then is the sheriff. Of course, sheriff's number 1 if it's an emergency. That's what we are trying to do, or this is what the board, my memory or understanding is that we thought this ordinance is the gold standard in the state of Minnesota. So with that, what we had was, I know I've met with numerous commissioners and constituents over the course of the year. You had numerous written complaints or concerns and asks with the ordinance. You've heard from cities, individuals, and so we still have two recommended revisions to the ordinance that are of I would say, substance, some minor things in there that I don't think are a lot, but you really have Section 2.1, which has been talked about previously today, that states that it would give an opt-out for a city if they wanted, say, we're going to handle our own short-term rental ordinance, and we don't want to be a part of the county's short-term rental licensing, or you give them an opt-out. And as long as they say they don't allow them, there's no public health threat. That's where we are at with that revision, to give them a little bit of flexibility if they didn't deem us there. Number two is there's been a lot of discussion at the previous committee of the whole that is 4 per bedroom too many. We don't feel that or believe that the septic is an issue with 4 per bedroom, but we do, one of the unintended consequences is we continue to have, the majority of those complaints are loud parties, they maxed occupancies and, 15, 20 people on a, 100-foot lot does seem to get to be annoyance for a lot of the neighbors, at least with the complaints. So the revision there in section 5.2 would be instead of 4 per bedroom plus 1 additional to the structure, it would be 3 per bedroom. That would potentially alleviate septic concerns that are concerned there, and address the largest number one complaint you'll get is the loud partying going on throughout the night. And usually that comes with the larger groups. So that's what we had today. I would take any questions, concerns with what's drafted in front of you.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I can, it looks like a lot of, the input we're getting is for more restrictions, if we have the for vacation rentals. Also, we've had 50 Lakes, Breezy Point, Cuyuna coming forward to the cities to say, how can we work together on this? I guess I'd like to first ask Don, what's your perspective on this, if I can, because you're handling the complaint, some of the complaints are those that are not licensed.
Well, actually, I've had discussion with a couple of different individuals in the last week or so, and my request actually of the board today is not to take any action. I've asked ACA Stephanie Shook, Assistant County Attorney, to do some additional legal research that we hadn't done before. I'd spoken with Gary and Tim about this, and with Commissioner Hogue, as he's the chair of the board. Obviously, it's the board's decision if you want to act today or not. But I would like the opportunity to research or continue or finalize the research of another issue that I asked Ms. Shook to research, and we only need a week or two. I mean, we can maybe come to the committee of the whole, maybe just place it right back on the next committee agenda. Once that research is done, that we would need the opportunity to meet with Gary and his staff and Tim so that we can go over that, and it may be that we come back with exactly what you have right now today. Might be it's slightly modified. I don't know what the outcome of that would be as I sit here. But, so I don't know if that directly answers your question. Mm-hmm. But the purpose of the public hearing is to get input. You've heard what those who came here today had to say. Some of that, and I didn't read all of the stuff that was submitted in writing, Ms. Shook did. Some of it may be in support. Some of it seems like it's not necessarily in support of what's proposed today. I think staff should have a time to analyze that. That's my suggestion, or my answer to your question.
Okay. Mr. Chair, too, I think we wanted to look at establishing the short-term vacation rental, and I think we need to know they were happening anyway. Just because we had the ordinance didn't open the door. They were just, your neighbors were already starting and looking at that as an investment opportunity for themselves. So, it's our biggest concern initially when we did this is who's doing them. We needed to identify how many we had going.
And so we established that, not wanting to be too restrictive, because again, we believe in people's property rights, but there is somewhat of an idea that it's a commercial property in a residential area. So we do want to work with, I at least would like to be able to work with the cities to see how can we work this to come to a compromise. I think the cities have the right to be more restrictive than what the county ordinance is. And I think I would agree with Don that I think if we can wait on tabling this until we can get more information and get a little bit clearer, I think that would be a good move for us at this time.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else? Well, I will, I agree as well with Don's request to research how we can work better with our cities as a partner, not as a unit of government that just kind of goes ahead and does something against the city's wishes. There's no revision suggestion for quiet time?
Currently, we didn't bring one forward, but that's definitely
And
something
given
we can-
that being, the largest complaint, I think in the next couple of weeks, we should review that maybe to see how do we handle that? I mean, how is it working today? The neighbors would call the hotline?
Correct.
And then that they would notify the owners. Where does the sheriff's department come into noise complaints on these as far as, or city?
Well, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, that has been a battle so as long as I've been in law enforcement. I know a number of years ago that it seemed to reach a peak is about the time that smoking in bars was banned. And at that point, we saw a large movement for outside bans at establishments. And that was kind of the new gig. And we had a great number of complaints coming in. I guess the first thing, and I don't have an answer for it because it's a tough topic, but the first thing that comes to my mind is, again, a topic that was brought up, is it's going to have to be comparable to all. Because a short-term ordinance complaint, and I agree, I love going to the campground, and 10 o'clock, I'm ready for bed, and I like it to be nice and quiet. But that standard then somehow would need to be applied if applicable, and Don would be the expert on that. A short-term rental being quiet at 10, and my house, which is a permanent residence, and I have friends over, and loud at midnight. Where is going to be the standard? And the enforcement does become an issue. So it's a topic to bring up. I think the compliance that you're going to see, people follow rules. Those that aren't going to follow rules, I don't think if it's at midnight or if it says it's at 10 p.m., those that aren't going to follow them simply aren't going to follow them. And oftentimes we're going to end up having a discussion with them or making a stop there anyways. But maybe Don also has some thoughts on it.
I think Scott covered that. I mean, that was all discussed in the committee when it was created and when this current proposal came forward. Certainly, the group can consider whether we want to change the quiet times as requested.
I think as well, Gary, the tool that we use is like a strike three and you're out rule. So if there are 3 verified complaints towards a property, then the license is pulled.
That is correct.
And I guess my concern with that is then what if they operate without a license? And so, we should consider that as well. And again, I don't know how familiar some of the people are with the 800 number that we have to file complaints. I look at the Cranes, I've had a couple conversations with them regarding septics, and that is a valid concern, I believe. Thus, I'm not sure, I guess, if we adjust the number of people, if that's going to completely resolve that, I'm not sure, but I think it's worth a try. I believe you were on a private lake? And I'm not sure, that's something we can discuss, but I don't know that we can control, I don't think our ordinance is in place to get to that level. But I guess what I'd like to do is just see us review these complaints that we've heard today. We know noise is the top complaint, and maybe try to incorporate that with Don's research and just see what we can do to modify the ordinance to help with these complaints.
Can I ask what constitutes a complaint?
Jake, can you explain how the process works for the complaint?
We've got 200 neighborhoods, so 55 seems awfully low.
Well, Mr. Chair and members of the board, we have a few different ways that someone could, we'll call it file a complaint. The first way is to call the hotline. And again, that's 24/7 access to a live person that'll take the complaint. Call the property manager, the emergency contact, get in contact with that person. And again, that's driving home that message of the property owner or the manager attempting to resolve that. Then what happens is if it's late and we're getting past the quiet hours issues and we're not getting contact with that manager, the sheriff's office is going to be called as well for those noise complaints to make sure that there's someone there that can handle that immediately. After that, when the hotline is called and it's logged onto our computer as a site visit, our staff will then follow up on the back end to call the complainant as well as the property owner to say, hey, we just wanted to follow up with you to make sure this is what we heard, this is what's going on. Just want to let you know this is what we consider to be a verified complaint. And so here's how that process works. We can get a lot of complaints at times about things, but the verification we use, particularly with noise, is to have a police report that we would get from whoever police jurisdiction that is, could be from City of Cross Lake, Sheriff's Office, whatever, wherever that's happening, to have a record of the log of that visit. And if it's confirmed by reading that or substantiating that, yep, there was a party that was broken up and it was an issue and it was after the hours that are our ordinance, we're going to consider that a substantiated complaint, and that's where we get into this 3-strike system where that's a first strike. And if we have 3 of those types of complaints, within that year, then we're going to revoke that license. The other thing that happens is folks can also get online and file a complaint through our online system rather than calling. And that's a similar process. In this case, though, they just fill out a complaint online. Our staff then reviews it, and we make those calls to try and get resolution to the issue. A lot of the times we will provide that information to call local law enforcement if it's going to be after hours. The third way people can do it as well, if either of those systems aren't working, and again, we're pushing hard on the hotline and the online system, is if they need to call or stop in at the counter for whatever reason as kind of a last resort, we'll take that and log it in ourselves. So we do have a pretty robust process that we think is working and is effective. To the question of, do we need to shift quiet hours and things like that, that's certainly a decision for the board. So, is that helpful?
Yeah, I think so. Can you come to the microphone? I'm sorry, just as... Okay.
Again, I'm Mike Asp, 119-215 Lakewood Drive. I believe that does skew it down quite a bit. One of our complaints this year was a neighbor, and I heard about this a couple days after the fact, so I'm going to do my best here to give you the lowdown. But one of the short-term rental people went out between the properties and started urinating on the property. He called the property owner, to which the property owner went over and called these people. This guy came over and pushed him to the ground and said, mind your own business. Now, I would have called the sheriff right at that point, called the landowner back, and they were kicked out the next morning. But here we are with an assault that I doubt was counted on this. He did call the land people who said that it was taken care of now because they were kicked out and they were banned from VRBO or whatever it was from that property again. But here we are with, I consider, a fairly serious charge. And I doubt that was counted.
Yeah, we would have to have you talk to the sheriff about that to see what, how that was resolved, if at all, so.
If I could,
Gary? I'm sorry.
Chair, in that 55, just to clarify, let's say you have a large party and 10 neighbors are upset, so we get 10 complaints on that. If it's one event, that still only counts as one complaint. We wouldn't say all of a sudden you have 10 complaints because of one incident and now you can't rent anymore. We still would work with them on that event, rectify it the best we can and move forward, with you can't have your renters do X, Y, Z, whatever the issue might be. Just to clarify those in that. There's, I'm sure, a lot more than 55 that have actual complaint, but on specific events, if that makes sense.
Commissioner Merrills.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. First of all, I agree with allowing Attorney Ryan to look into this situation and come back with better legal standing, perhaps, that we might have. But I also think that occupancy, which we currently are proposing 3+1, correct, down from 4+1, I would go even lower because I think that would address a lot of the noise issue. It would address the garbage issue. It would address the parking issue that's out there. There was one letter writer that wrote about the number of watercraft that are put at a dock when these larger groups are at these particular rental properties. Maybe there should be a restriction on it, but I think lowering the occupancy is going to address that issue. The one issue that I find interesting from Mr. Crane, I believe that's the right name, is the saturation perspective of how many in a particular geographic area should be allowed. That's an interesting one to try to answer and come up with something that would address that. To Mr. Askland's point, a small lake, we'll probably never be able to regulate how they fish that lake. So, and the size of the lake will determine the impact that those kind of people have on it. But I also think that occupancy could address some of that, and then trying to be good neighbors as you are doing over there, I think that's the approach you have to take. So that's my viewpoint on this. I think there's some good things to still address. The relationship with the various cities and jurisdictions out there that might not want to be part of the county's ordinance. I think we have to respect that, and I think that we should work with them to figure out how we can do that in the most effective way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other?
I just have a question for the sheriff. If you get called on a noise complaint, do you go out?
Yes.
Okay.
The standard answer is yes. There could be variables that maybe that get plugged in, but yes. And oftentimes they are investigated and found to be true. And there's other times when we get out there and maybe the yell went, we're calling the sheriff or we're calling the police, and by the time we get there, things could be calmed down. But it's the noise complaint is a consistent issue that we deal with, and not just related to this situation. This is something that everyone has company up, or the music's just playing, or the parents are gone and the kids are home. I mean, it's not just reference to VRBOs or rental units. It's encompassing really all. Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
So with that, Mr. Chair.
Can I ask a question? 2 weeks ago, we had to call the sheriff's office for the noise again at our place, and I think I called the sheriff about 11:15 at night. There was noise, and the sheriff came out at 11:15 and called me back and said he got things quieted down. I said, thank you very much. So I'm just kind of concerned, do we first call this 800 number, or do we call the sheriff? What is the proper procedure on that situation? And I appreciate the sheriff for coming out that night. He did a nice job, and I know it was late, but he did come out and quiet down the situation.
Mr. Chair, if I could. To address that, I was on the committee when this ordinance was first drafted, and any answer is the right answer. You know, it's what we're trying to do is for documentation is the biggest single thing we're trying to gain here, and compliance. And the documentation will take place whether it comes through the sheriff's office or whether it goes through the reporting number. We know, the sheriff's office, we know that a number of calls are going to come in to us because it is a violation, you know, and very similar. It could be the house that's opposite side of you that's owned, and it could be the cousins that came up that are just wild and crazy that weekend.
Yeah.
So we're used to it. So there is no wrong answer. Documentation-wise, I think you will get both. But the more minuscule, if you will, the parking problems, the additional boats, you know, the garbage in a yard, or, you know, 14 garbage containers out smelling, those kind of complaints is what we're really trying to, in my mind, push to the reporting number, the 1-800 number.
Okay, one other comment. The people that own the short-term rental next to us made sure that we call them first. So over the 11 years, I've probably made 30 calls or some calls to these people and have not contacted the sheriff's office. So those aren't on recorded. So when we look at these recordings here, a lot of those are not recorded because you've called the owners and they've kind of quieted down, where I think we should be calling the sheriff or this number first. Before I call the owner, I'm going to be calling these two, so they get recorded.
Jake, can you address that? So in that scenario, does that go back as a strike to that property?
Yes, so, Mr. Chair, members of the board, I was just going to bring that up, that to directly answer the question, if we don't receive a complaint through the short-term rental hotline or complaint system, we can't track those, you know, we call it the 3 strikes or the number of issues. It doesn't mean the problem didn't get solved, though, because what we really want is to stop the problem. But so if you're going to call the sheriff right away and you don't call the complaint hotline, even later, to say, hey, I just want to let you know 2 days ago I called the sheriff for this issue, at least then we can track that and say, hey, and get a hold of the short-term rental owner. So there's a lot of different ways to do it, but if we don't call the hotline or the short-term rental complaint system, we're not going to be able to track internally that was a short-term rental specific violation rather than a general disturbing the peace call. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Does that answer your question? I don't know how we can address that, or if we even can, so.
And what we've done this year at, you know, under Gary's leadership as well, as I think we've got some fact sheets now. We've really, this spring, we tried to get the word out on this hotline and the complaint system more than we ever did last year, and really tried to have that consistent approach. So we'll try to keep that up.
Mr. Chair, and to clarify, I stand corrected. We will look at exactly that, of how we can, you know, we document everything on our level of calls for service that come in. And I remember that topic during the sessions that we had. We will have to figure out a way to tag that. The hard part for our deputies at night is exactly that, is if we don't hear the information that it's coming from a rental unit, it's difficult for us to differentiate between what noise complaint would be related or not, but I will, we'll work to see if we could better connect those dots somehow.
Just one other comment. This particular case that we're talking about 2 weeks ago, I talked to the property owners of the short-term rental, and she said, boy, I got a bad report that night from my renters. They said they were sitting around the fireplace making all this noise, and all of a sudden a police officer comes out from behind the house, and we kind of got scared, she said, but they quieted down. So it worked well.
Okay, one last comment, and then we're going to act on this.
The one thing I got to say is, you know, look at the, again, unintended repercussions from what happened with our neighbor here. I think he tried to do the right thing by contacting the property owner. And the, you know, guy who paid $7,000 and doesn't want to lose his $7,000 came out swinging. This may be 1 in 1,000, but we really want the people taking care of this? Are these landowners trained in what to do? Are they you know, did they say the neighbor to the left or right complained and now he comes out swinging? How do you know it was this one?
Right.
Well, obviously there's a problem there with taking care of it yourself, so something's got to be done there too for these people to get a little bit of training as a rentable unit, I believe.
So if there's anybody that wants more information on the hotline on how to report these, you know, maybe Jake can hook up with you when we're done with this item. So with that, what are the board's wishes?
Mr. Chair, at this time, I would make the motion to table this issue for further direction from the attorney, Don Ryan.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Brecken. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, if I could ask clarification, would the board like us to be back here in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Or come to the committee of the whole for further discussion? I just want a little direction how you'd like me to proceed.
I think in 2 weeks.
We'll be here.
Perfect. Thank you, Don. All right, we are going to move along here to the next item, land services. Preliminary plat.
All right, Mr. Chair and members of the board, we'll shift gears here to preliminary plat. It's been, you know, we had a good run for a while actually, where I was coming consistently with preliminary plats to the board. It's been a little while here. I'm getting a little nostalgic on preliminary plats coming to the board. So we do have another one. This is for a request to approve, table, or deny the preliminary plat for BA Capital. The applicant, in this case, authorized agent is David Lindbaum. I think page 124 of the packet would be a good place to start in terms of visual. This is make sure this is working. There we go. This is just a little bit of a visual on what we're looking at here. That's Moberg Lake. In first assessment, just to the west of North Long Lake, along Green Gables Road, just north of that. It's this property here. And then if we go to page 116, we'll shift to the plat itself, I think. There we go. So again, there's that property. More detail, this is what the plat would look like. This is a request to split a single lot into 3 lots. As you know, there was a revision to our ordinance in April to state that all riparian properties must go through a platting process regardless of the number of new lots. So that's why we're here today as a result of that change. Previously, this would have been just an administrative subdivision. There is a public road, Love Lake Road, already in existence, maintained by our county highway department because it's in first assessment and being maintained as such. So in this case, there was a variance approved by our Board of Adjustment to not have to do any upgrades or any of the new standards that were also passed in April 2022 this year in first assessment, as this is already a public road maintained by the highway department as such. So in this case, it's simply a request to approve the preliminary plat. Otherwise, the applicant has met all the conditions and the ordinance standards. I do see there was a request in the conditions for a developer's agreement to make sure our monumentation was in. I'm happy to report that we have verified that the monumentation is in already, and so there's no real need for a developer's agreement here because there's no improvements that will be done on the property. I'm sorry, one last thing. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval for this at their September 15th meeting. So with that, I'll take any questions, otherwise look for a motion.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, what are the wishes?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Brecken, second by Commissioner Coring.
Mr. Chair, if I might, this is for the preliminary plat we're talking, because there's a preliminary and a final.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, this is just a motion for the preliminary at this time. We'll do a separate motion for the final plat.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next.
Okay, these final plats at times can be a bit of a formality, so I won't do a lot of introduction. This applicant is simply wishing to submit the final plat for this one. We've had our contracted survey coordinator, KLD, do a robust review in our recording office of the final plat, looked at the titles, ensure its recordability, and it appears to be sound. So at this time, the applicant is wishing to file the final plat and approve that as well.
Mr. Chair, hearing no discussion, I would make the motion to approve the final plat for BA Capital.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Barrows, second by Commissioner Coring. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Jake.
All right, thank you.
Community Services. Good morning.
Morning. Mr. Chair, County Board members, a few months ago, I brought forward a resolution supporting what we called at that time the Emmer Bill, or the Due Process Continuity of Care Act. The National Association of Counties, or NACO, is looking for additional support of this act as well as two other acts to adjust the policy known as the Medicaid Inmate Exclusion Policy. So what is this policy? Well, the Social Security Act prohibits the use of federal funds and services such as Veterans Affairs, Children's Health Insurance Program, and Medicaid for medical care provided to inmates of a public institution. The federal law does not differentiate between a convicted inmate or a person incarcerated prior to conviction. The Medicaid Inmate Exclusion Policy is only enacted for individuals confined inside the jail. Federal rules prohibit states from billing Medicaid for any inmate care unless the covered individual requires a hospital stay of at least 24 hours. This policy denies federal benefits to individuals who are still presumed innocent under the Constitution, and it removes access to the Children's Health Insurance Program benefits for youth who are placed in juvenile facilities. It also limits access to veterans' health benefits. In effect, the veteran loses access to VA medical care facilities while incarcerated until such time as he or she is unconditionally released. And what we know is that more than half of our justice-involved veterans have either mental health conditions like PTSD, anxiety, or depression, or substance use disorders. At the time of the writing of our resolution, there were approximately 58 pretrial detainees in Crow Wing County Jail. Of those screened by our embedded social workers, 43% reported mental health needs and 30% reported substance use disorder. So why is this a problem? Well, as we know, our local jails have become our one-stop treatment centers and are some of our largest behavioral health care providers in our community. Our national mental health crisis is also concentrated in our county jails, so it's not just a matter of Crow Wing County's issue, but a national issue. County jails are paying to fill this gap for individuals who are awaiting trial, and local taxpayers are paying for it. The full cost is shifted to the local taxpayers, and there's no longer a partnership between federal, state, and local folks. Individuals who can afford to bail out remain eligible for their federal health care benefits. So basically, if you can afford to go home, you keep your benefits, and if you cannot, you lose them. So I'm asking today, these acts would amend the exclusion policy to allow for continued Medicaid coverage for incarcerated persons not yet convicted of a crime or our pretrial detainees. In the resolution, you'll see 3 acts referenced. The first is the Medicaid Reentry Act, which would allow Medicaid payments 30 days prior to release. This would allow us to get services in place regarding substance use disorder or mental health treatment programs prior to the individual being released, so get them set up so they're able to go out into the community and participate in those services. Again, the Due Process Continuity of Care Act, which would allow the pretrial detainees to receive Medicaid benefits, and then the Equity in Pretrial Health Coverage Act, which would remove the limitations under Medicaid, Medicare, CHIP, and the Department of Veterans Affairs on benefits for persons in custody pending disposition of charges. So I ask today that you approve this resolution and that it be sent to our federal legislators.
Questions? Seeing none, what are the wishes?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Brecken. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
All right, County Sheriff.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, to continue, I guess jail is the topic of the day. I would like to remind everyone that this Saturday we have the jail tours. So in the history of our, I'll say our new jail, across the street from the Sheriff's Office, this is only the second time that we've been open for tours. We're about 20 years ago when we first opened the facility, we were able to have public tours. It is a rare opportunity for those that are interested, and Don was just giving me a hard time because my screensaver actually is a picture of the jail.
Only guy I know that has that.
But it's a unique opportunity for those that normally don't end up in jail, which is a great majority of our population, to come in and see our facility. It is this Saturday. You do need to sign up. If on our Facebook page, there is a link that you need to follow and some rudimentary information. I'll go through it right here just if people are wondering. Your name, you have to be at least 17. Would you like a free meal? We are making a meal. It is jail food. And sign up for a tour time. They're going to be every 45 minutes starting at 10 a.m. And we are looking to hire, so we're asking for people if they're interested, and we're hoping they'll walk around and be interested. And also, where did you hear about the event? So I'd encourage everyone to show up. I will be there, and it gives us a great opportunity to showcase and show how proud we are not only of our facility, but of our employees that work in our facility every day. So that is my update. I'd certainly entertain any questions. Thank you.
Any questions for the Sheriff?
Sounds like a good event.
Yes.
That'll be interesting, see what the turnout is.
I'm hoping, yeah, we've got a number of people already signed up.
Good.
And I'm hoping the day of we'll get more. We will take, basically sign-ups right there that we can, quick process through and try to get in the next tour group. When we did this 20 years ago, a great majority of people came in, and that was just an open house type scenario. But it's a rare opportunity because jails are very well protected, so it's a very rare opportunity to come and see us.
What does the menu look like?
What's that?
What does the menu look like?
I think this is going to be a luxury day. This is not normal jail food. I think it is actually hamburgers. So it's very simple. It's on the tray with the milk, but you get a hamburger, yes.
Okay.
That's for the inmates, too.
All right, anything else?
Yes, the inmates will have hamburgers that day, too. Yeah, we do one meal, yeah.
Anything else for the Sheriff? Seeing none. County Attorney.
Mr. Chair, I just had a couple of quick things. Short-term rental discussion was going on, and I know that the Land Services just, I think last Friday, sent us over a number of additional cases for the enforcement. So we are looking and trying to work with that enforcement aspect. Primarily, I wanted to let you know that the Nelson Preserve Cartway has now been appealed to District Court. And I have referred the matter to MCIT, who has appointed Paul Reavers to represent the county's interests. So we actually have insurance coverage for whatever part we would be in that. And there is a motion by Pat Kruger, the attorney for the Middletons petitioners, to intervene, which means the county's legal representative won't have much involvement. Told you I'd keep you in the loop. That's the most recent update. Thank you.
Cool. All right. County Administrator.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, yesterday there was a senior management team meeting. We talked about the Pick a Mile program because the SMT has adopted a section of County Road to do the Pick a Mile program. That is our version of the Adopt a Highway program. So while we're talking about it, I just want to promote that to citizens and residents who may be listening. We do have a program for helping to pick up garbage along county roads and to beautify the county. It's sad to me because, you know, in the same week we're talking about that, we're talking about township road issues in Commissioner Coring's district, where people are using remote township roads to just dump garbage. And it's sad to me in this day and age that people can't be a little bit more environmentally responsible. Maybe the township ought to adopt a pick-a-mile program too. They badly need one. We have not quite as big a problem on our county roads, probably because they're more heavily traveled, but when we went and picked up that mile, we found stuff, didn't we? We also have a contest for those who adopt a section of highway of the county for the most interesting item that you might find in one of our county road ditches. Sometimes you come up with some really interesting stuff that people threw out. So we talked about that. We also talked about the pulse survey. This is a shortened engagement survey. We do a longer engagement survey every other year and a shortened one in the off years. We're in one of the off years, so that is going to be coming up. We'll be administering that October 18th through November 1st. And so you'll probably see an email about that. We talked about performance reviews. Even though we're only at the beginning of October, the end of the year is nigh. We use December largely to plan for the performance expectations for the next year. And then as soon as the year ends, we start collecting all of the performance data from the previous year and start to do performance reviews for the staff. Our goal is to have that done by mid-February, I think. I think it was mid-February. We also talked about making sure that we are meeting the public purpose doctrine when we are buying meals. That gets to be kind of a dicey issue. If people are going remote locations, and that's typical. If we buy meals for things here, it has to be because folks are working through a lunch hour, that they really didn't have an alternative. And so we talked about that, making sure that we're consistent about that. And we talked about the 2023 benefits renewal. That open enrollment is going to be October 17th to November 4th. So you guys will need to pay attention to those dates. That will be coming out, and HR will have information with you or for you about that as well. Flu shot clinics coming up on November 3rd and November 10th in land services if you need a flu shot. And our lead program kickoff is in November. Talked about those things. I'm happy to answer questions about that or anything related to county government.
Any questions?
Mr. Chair, could I have a minute?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I guess I would just bring the county administrator brought up the trash on the township roads down there. You know, I born here, grew up in St. Matthias Township, and I don't know that I remember seeing any trash on the St. Matthias Township roads. And so when I went down to this township that I represent in the very southern part of the county on the very eastern side of my district and rode around for 45 minutes meandered on these roads, I almost felt like I was lost. But I was appalled at the amount of garbage and carpet and sheetrock and just household garbage. It just kind of blew me away. And I actually went down there with the idea that I was going to be the fixer and I was going to help them. And after 45 minutes, I just looked at these township people and I just said, you know what, guys? I said, Crow Wing County and myself as the county commissioner, I don't know that there's anything we can do. I said, you are the road authority here and people are dumping in your ditch. I said, the only thing that I can do is I said, I can talk to my fellow commissioners, and if you do a pickup day, maybe we could waive some of the expense that you have to bring it out to the landfill. So I'm just making you aware that I am not requesting that today, but I got to tell you, I don't know. I know there's a lot of good people in this world, but boy, there's a lot of bad people, and it really depressed me that day that these people would desecrate really our beautiful county here. I wish I knew who they were. I'd love to load it up and go and back right up to their front door and dump it right in their yard. It's just appalling. So, these township people, a lot of times, nobody even wants to run for town boards. That's why we have an unorganized territory, because nobody really wants to have town boards. So I applaud these people for stepping up and trying to do the best they can to kind of keep the wheels on the vehicle. So anyway, I guess we're all trying to do the best we can in a imperfect world. And so, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, we have, as you know, a solid waste committee meeting on Friday, so that might be a good topic for discussion, so.
Thank you.
Tim, are you done with your report?
I am done, unless there are any questions.
Seeing none, no additional business. At this time, then, we would be looking to move into closed session.
Mr. Chair, I would so move that we move into closed session pending litigation under attorney-client privilege pursuant to Minnesota Statute 13D.05, subdivision 2-4.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Franzine. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
5 minutes.
Yeah, we'll take a,
Hold on.
She have somebody out there?
That's up to her. I told them,
oh, okay. Well, let's,
we don't need to wait.
Okay.
okay, we were back in open session. Who's going to, Diane?
I will, Your Honor.
If you
Yes.
would.
So I would be asking for a motion to approve a settlement of $75,000 to resolve a pending 299A claim against the county, which is a continuation of health care benefits. The matter was mediated last week, and this resolution was recommended to the mediator and will be indicated I would present it to the board today for approval.
I'll make the motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Barrows,
I'll second.
second by Commissioner Brecken. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Seeing that glare.
Wow. Mr. Chairman, if there's nothing else to come before the county board, I would move a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Coring, second by Commissioner Barrows to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.